I suffered from ulcerative colitis every day for years and years, probably about a decade in total. In fact, the drugs that I was taking to manage my ulcerative colitis and that were touted as safe may be the reasons why I have to live with stage 4 chronic kidney disease today. But I haven't had to take any of those medications for my ulcerative colitis since December of 2018. And now, coming up on 6 years of being both drug-free and symptom-free, I'm comfortable saying that I cured what is usually said to be an incurable chronic autoimmune disease. And in this video, I'm going to share with you how I did it. If you could please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, this would help the YouTube algorithm serve this information to other colitis sufferers who could benefit from hearing this. And if you know someone with ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, or other irritable bowel diseases, please share it directly with them. And if you're new here, welcome to Carnivore Talk. My name is Robert Angle, but you can call me Bob. So, is this going to be just another carnivore diet video? No, not exactly. While I will talk about how the carnivore diet has helped people with their Crohn's or colitis, carnivore actually doesn't get the credit in my case. I'm going to explain what ulcerative colitis is, how it's typically managed, and how it affected my day-to-day life, hopefully without being too gross. And then I'm going to share what I was able to do to fix it for me. Now, what worked for me may not work for you, but knowing what worked for me might help point you in the direction where you need to look so that you can find out what will work for you. And the carnivore diet, at least the principles behind the carnivore diet, is probably where you're going to find success. So, what is ulcerative colitis? Ulcerative colitis is an inflammatory bowel disease that causes inflammation and ulcers, that is, sores and lesions, on the innermost lining of your rectum and large intestine, also known as the colon. Symptoms can vary, but usually start fairly mild and then grow more severe over time. There can be periods of remission, but up to 30% of sufferers will need to have surgery at some point, and surgery often means the removal of your entire large intestine, rectum, and anus, called a proctocolectomy, and making an opening in your belly that attaches to a pouch outside your body that collects your poop that you have to manually empty. This is called an ileostomy, and that's called an ileostomy bag. Now, symptoms of ulcerative colitis include an increase in the amount of bowel movements you have every day, and they usually involve chronic diarrhea along with some blood or pus in the stool. You can sometimes experience a sense of urgency to defecate, which comes instantly and without warning, like out of nowhere, and you run and sit down and then nothing happens. But while you're sitting there with nothing coming out, you feel nauseous and maybe even feverish or sweaty. You feel fatigued all the time and are experiencing unintended weight loss, usually because you're afraid that eating is going to send you straight to the bathroom, not just once or twice, but several times over the next couple hours. And this is exactly what started happening to me around 2008 to 2009. I started to have diarrhea all the time. Sometimes the urge would strike suddenly while I was driving, and disgustingly, I would fail to make it to a safe place to do anything about it in time. I basically stopped eating breakfast and lunch because eating anything felt like I just liquefied it, and then it went right through me and out the other end. I would wake up at 7 a.m. and basically spent until noon stuck in the bathroom before I could go to work. I remember complaining to my father when we were out for a margarita night at the local Mexican restaurant. I told him how I couldn't remember the last time I had had a solid stool, and he encouraged me to go see a doctor about it because it could be serious. But at the time, I was afraid to because my wife and I, we didn't have health insurance on ourselves. Then, in 2010, the Affordable Care Act was passed, and for me and my family, at least in our situation at the time, it couldn't come at a better time. Obamacare was like an Obama send. And with the subsidy we could qualify for, we were able to obtain affordable health insurance, which was actually great coverage when it first came out. Now, over the years, the costs continued to rise. It became unaffordable. The coverages have gotten worse. And thankfully, today, we don't have to rely on that program anymore, but that is neither here nor there. So now that I was insured, I found a good primary care physician that I like, whom I still see to this day. And he referred me to a gastroenterologist, which is a specialist in the diagnosis and treatment of disorders of the gastrointestinal tract and associated organs. Organs like, the liver, the gallbladder, the colon, the stomach, the pancreas, and the like. And he said he would have to take a look inside, and so he scheduled my first ever colonoscopy. Yeehaw, I was 35. Well, the colonoscopy was actually a breeze. The prep was nothing. Sure, you spend the evening before stuck in the bathroom, but I had been spending every day of my life for hours every day stuck in the bathroom, so this wasn't anything new. During the colonoscopy, I was given the good stuff and was knocked out. One minute, I remember watching the anesthesia being administered into my veins, and the next thing I know, I'm waking up 30 minutes later in the next room with zero recollection of what just happened. Just the way I like it. I only tell this because I know people, particularly family members of mine, who are scared to death to have this type of screening done. But don't be. Colonoscopies, they're easy. They're a breeze. Get them done. Well, after I had some time to wake up, and before I was dismissed to go home, the doctor comes over to my bed to tell me what he has found. And the first words out of his mouth were, "Well, Bob, your colon looks like shit." And he proceeded to tell me that I have severe ulcerative colitis, kind of like what you see pictured here. Now, don't worry, this isn't actually my photo. He then gave me 3 prescriptions, a 30-day steroid, an oral tablet called Dipentum, which is an anti-inflammatory medication known as mesalamine, as well as bottles of liquid mesalamine that were being administered as a suppository, temporarily, at least until we had this under control. Now, with the help of these medications, my symptoms did indeed go away. And I can remember distinctly asking the doctor there while I was in the recovery room if there was any dietary changes I should be making. And he said no, that diet has nothing to do with this. This is simply an autoimmune disease with no known cause and no known cure. I could continue eating whatever I wanted, and I could probably be on Dipentum for life or until it stops working and we have to move on to a different kind of drug. So, for the next 8 years, I was on Dipentum every day. And it was actually very aggravating. And I don't mean that taking pills is aggravating. That's actually easy. But this medication was not very popular with the insurance companies. One insurance company explained that it was a Tier 4 drug and didn't qualify for the typical $25 copay at the pharmacy. Instead, my copay was usually about $150 a month with insurance. If I got behind on my insurance payments, then I'd walk into the pharmacy and they would be like, "That'll be $2,200. And I would be like, "I'll be back tomorrow." And I'd go home and pay my insurance bill, then come back and pick up my prescription. Every November, scouring through the healthcare.gov marketplace was really just a game of finding out which insurance company was going to cover my medication and our doctors. My wife at the time was having issues now too, and also seeing several specialists. We ended up curing her issues too, without their help, and makes for a good story, another video for another time. Now in November of 2018, it's time to choose an insurance company again, and I selected Ambetter for the 2019 calendar year. And believe me, I did my homework. The information on their website said that they covered Dipentum. But when I went to fill my prescription in January of 2019, they were like, "That'll be $2,200. And I was like, I'll be back. I was fully paid up. So I called customer service, and this is the line of bull they gave me. They said, "Oh, we still cover it, but now we classify it as a Tier 5 medication. And this means that we will pay for it after you've met your annual out-of-pocket maximum. In other words, they cleverly found a way to not pay for it all, or at best, maybe buy me a courtesy bottle come December. Well, I can afford that, so I stopped taking it. Early in January 2019 was the last time I ever took medication for my ulcerative colitis. Now, I was okay until about the middle of March, and then I could sense, this is coming back. My symptoms were starting to return, and they were progressively getting worse and worse, and then by the time May came around, I was back to the same severe symptoms that I had 9 years earlier, and so I started looking for a new gastroenterologist because my current insurance didn't work with my former one, and I looked and I found a doctor with excellent reviews, but he was booked until August, so I was going to have to wait this out. So now I am back in this routine of waking up at 7 in the morning, not being able to leave my house until noon. I'm losing weight because I'm afraid to eat. I've got the blood and I've got the pus in the stool again. And I keep remembering that those with ulcerative colitis have an increased risk of colon cancer. So I'm not happy in the slightest. So I would be stuck there in the bathroom and I would be on my phone, like we all are in the bathroom these days, doing my research. I eventually found my way into forums for people with irritable bowel diseases and started to read the experiences of others. Some of them had found success by eliminating certain foods from their diet. I can still hear my first doctor saying that diet has nothing to do with it. But after reading these experiences, I was starting to be skeptical. I'm not so sure now. And so week by week, I would try to change up my diet. One week, I would eliminate artificial sweeteners. Another week, I stopped eating hot sauce and hot peppers because I like hot things. And then one week, I even eliminated meat and so on. Nothing changed. My life was still being spent mostly behind the bathroom door. Well, eventually I came across another forum and another thread on the topic where someone mentioned that coffee is a trigger for them, but they just enjoy it so much. And there were tons of replies from people saying the same thing. Some saying they have to limit themselves to 1 cup only, and others swearing that they know it bothers them a bit, but they could never give it up. And for me, the light bulb went off. You see, I was a heavy coffee drinker, and I'm talking a pot a day. I would wake up and brew a pot and drink my first 2 16-ounce mugs at home in the morning, then spend the next several hours chained to the toilet. And when I was finally brave enough to leave the house around noon, I would pour the remaining 32 ounces in my tumbler that was insulated to stay warm, and then I would nurse that thing throughout the day, mostly to kill my hunger pains because I was afraid to eat food, or else I'd be stuck in my client's bathroom all day. Well, I was pretty desperate at this point because I had volunteered to do security at an event over summer that would require me to start at 6 a.m. and work till about 6 p.m., and I didn't think I was going to be able to fulfill my obligations. So, on the morning of Friday, July 19th, 2019, I woke up and didn't brew or consume any coffee. And to my surprise, I went through the entire day and did not have any episodes of darting to the bathroom at all. I had a massive headache, and I had to take some painkillers for sure from the caffeine withdrawal, but I never went to the bathroom. Well, Saturday, I didn't drink any coffee, and I went through that day just fine. And Sunday was the third and final day, and I went through that one just fine as well. The entire weekend, I never had a single bowel movement. I couldn't believe it. It was like a miracle. And so to this day, I have yet to touch coffee at all. About 6 weeks later, August came around, and I finally had my appointment with my new gastroenterologist. And he says to me, "Well, what brings you in here?" And I explain that I actually don't think I need his services anymore. I tell him how I used to have ulcerative colitis, but as silly as it sounds, it went away when I quit coffee. He listens, but he doesn't buy it. He tells me that it flies in the face of all the medical literature there is printed on the subject, and that it's well established that diet has nothing to do with ulcerative colitis. And I'm like, well then, how do we explain this? And he just chalks it up to probably coincidence that it just happened to go into remission, but it'll be back and that we should take another look inside. And so we schedule another colonoscopy. I've had actually several at this point, but now it's September 2020. The colon looks healthy, and there's no visible ulcers or any scarring. And since I'm not experiencing any symptoms, he says we're not going to take any medications at this time. Let's basically only use drugs if I need help managing my symptoms. And at the moment, I didn't have any symptoms. Well, I have a follow-up visit with him about once a year and a colonoscopy every other year because I'm considered high risk for colon cancer with an ulcerative colitis diagnosis. With each visit, I basically tell him that I'm still fine. And I retell my quitting coffee gets all the credit story. He still humors me, and he calls me his unicorn because he says he's never seen anybody diagnosed with ulcerative colitis put it into remission without drugs, nor is he seen anybody that's been able to live life without taking prescriptions for the rest of their lives. All his clients, they're on prescriptions. So anyway, just 1 month ago, we scheduled another colonoscopy, and this is what he saw. Perfectly healthy, no trace of any issues whatsoever. The biopsy returned nothing, that I've heard of at least, and he says that there's no need for me to see him again for at least 5 years. I'm drug-free, and yes, you just saw me from the inside. So what does this mean for you? Am I implying that you should stop drinking coffee if you have ulcerative colitis? I'm suggesting you give it a try. It could very well be that the toxins in coffee are triggering your immune system to attack your colon as well. At the same time, I have to acknowledge that millions of people all over the world drink coffee every day without any issues. And just because coffee triggered my ulcerative colitis doesn't mean that's what's triggering yours. But something is, and that is where the carnivore diet comes into this conversation. The carnivore diet is an elimination diet. And thousands and thousands of people have found that when they eat a strict carnivore diet of just meat, water, and salt, most of their illnesses and so-called chronic diseases get cured or go into remission. There are numerous testimonies of individuals who cured their irritable bowel diseases, such as Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, by means of a carnivore diet. So, yeah, I would highly recommend that you try the carnivore diet for at least 60 days, preferably 90. There's a good chance that your symptoms, if they're diet-related, will clear up. Then you can start adding back foods one at a time. You could try adding a new food every other week or so and see how your body reacts to it. In this way, over time, you can find out which foods trigger your flare-ups and avoid them. Now, some people learn that most plants give them issues of one kind or another, and they decide to remain carnivore for life. And that's a perfectly healthy thing to do. Others who want to enjoy more variety are eventually incorporating more single ingredient fruits or vegetables or other in their otherwise carnivore-centric diet, and that might be okay for them. Wherever your healthiest and happiest position happens to land on the proper human diet spectrum, as Dr. Berry coined it, can vary from person to person, and your DNA may come into play here. Now, some common triggers besides coffee are high-fiber foods such as broccoli, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts. You actually don't need fiber in your diet at all, despite what they say. I haven't had any for like a year and a half. So don't be afraid to stay away from fiber. Raw fruits and raw vegetables can irritate an already inflamed mucosa. Perhaps you've already noticed that salads and certain vegetables cause bloating or gas and send you darting to the restroom. The same goes for sugar alcohols or other sugar substitutes. Some people need to avoid dairy, while others can enjoy all the dairy they want. If you're symptom-free, like me, and you can tolerate some of these other foods, great. Just be honest with yourself. Perhaps you are tolerating them, but your body is not tolerating them. Some sources will say that red meat is a common trigger, and I can tell you with confidence that that is a bunch of horse pucky. Red meat is a superfood, and it should be the cornerstone of your diet. But it constantly gets thrown under the bus by vegan propaganda and the big food corporations that want to sell you their grain-based ultra-processed foods, which is probably a major player in why most of us developed ulcerative colitis in the first place. After quitting coffee, I am no longer a slave to the toilet, no longer chained to the bathroom, no longer running in there upwards of 25 times a day to sit down. After starting my carnivore diet, I'm in there maybe 2 or 3 times a week at best, and it's never an emergency situation. When I'm going to go, I can usually tell that today is the day, hours ahead of time, which means that while I'm driving, I don't have to worry about any sudden accidents anymore. Ulcerative colitis is an autoimmune disease. The immune system is designed to combat toxins, bacteria, and viruses, and more. Something is triggering that immune system, causing it to be overactive, and it attacks your colon. There's something triggering that immune response, and it's worth trying to figure out what that could be. While it could be something like stress or something environmental, since it does directly affect your gut, there's a really good chance that it comes down to something you're putting in your gut, whether that's the toxins found in coffee, in processed food, or some plant or family of plants that you consume regularly and would have never dreamed was slowly killing you from the inside out. It is certainly worth the effort to try an elimination diet like the carnivore diet to see if you too can't weed out what the culprit is. For me, that culprit was coffee, and I will never let another drop pass these lips again. Again, please like this video and subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends or family or in social media groups with those who suffer from irritable bowel diseases like ulcerative colitis. My name is Bob, and I'll see you next time.